The views expressed here are those of the authors and do not in any way represent the views of SafeerTV.
Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome to another episode of Ladies First. I'm joined by my panellists Francesca, Tamara and Saida Sabah. Welcome ladies. Let's get straight into it. So hitting the headlines lately, there is a case of a suicidal woman who gave birth by caesarean section after being refused an abortion in the Republic of Ireland. She was reportedly a victim of rape. In Northern Ireland, just to give you some background, women cannot obtain an abortion even in cases of rape. The legislation dates from 1861 and a woman only has access to abortion if her life is at risk. For women who have unwanted pregnancies, a lot of the time they have to travel to England for private procedures, which does cost money, or taking the abortion pill, knowing that they could be caught and charged upon their return with murder back home in Ireland. So what I would like to ask you ladies is, what are our thoughts about this, our own opinions about in these extreme circumstances such as rape? How do we feel, is abortion appropriate? What is our viewpoint on it? Or is it something that, you know, a situation that a person just has to learn to adjust to? What are your thoughts?
Everything has context, right? I mean, we cannot judge that way. It's not black and white. It's never black and white. We cannot say, oh, I don't. To be honest with you, I don't even know the views of the scholars or the the Maraja that we have, what they say about it. But to come in and say, let's say, she's a victim of rape, to come and say, oh, she's not allowed to have abortion when going through such big traumatic, event in her life. I don't know. Is that really fair?
I think personally, in a case like that, I mean, you've been raped. That's horrendous on its own, and then you're having to suffer the consequences. It's a pregnancy. It's an unwanted pregnancy. It's a child you're going to be bringing out. I think an abortion in a case like that would be perfectly justifiable and understandable, perfectly, because to have to deal with a rape itself is quite traumatic.
It is traumatic.
Then to top it off, have a child
of your rapist. You're going to see his face on that child, for the
and
rest
then raising
of your
that
life.
child.
Let's just be clear here that the majority of marriages do not agree with abortion unless it's a life and death situation. We have incidences, for example, during the Bosnian War, for example, where, and in other countries too, let's not just speak it to Muslims, where rape is used as a form of control and humiliation. And I don't think there was any managers who came out and said it was okay to terminate a pregnancy. In fact, the story just faded out of the news. And surely there must be cases where women have, in those situations, given birth to the child. But I think we need to stress that the majority of managers do not agree with termination. I'm sure there's others out there who have different opinions, as with everything else in life. But personally speaking, I think we've discussed this previously, that that kind of stress, how would we react to it? Like you've already stated.
It's very contextual. It's very, it depends. I mean, if you're just going out and having fun, being careless about, protection and all that, and you have children and then you don't want them because you're young and you want to, you've got a career ahead of you and you want to have an abortion, that's one thing. But then being in a situation when you're, it's a completely horrific situation. So there's no black and white thing. It's like a big grey area there.
So what we're saying is, why should the women have to be almost punished for something that was beyond her control and then given a lifelong sentence?
It is a lifelong sentence.
And have to live with that, whereas wouldn't the most, I don't want to use humane because it's a bit of an oxymoron, but wouldn't it be just more logical to allow the person to continue with their lives and not continue with the pregnancy? Because there's going to be ramifications. The rest of in Bosnia, the women were petrified what the community would think. Would that child be ostracized?
I mean, there's so many things that the person or the mother and the child have to face in future from society. So many things to think about. I don't think it's just quite difficult
But also for
very
a
difficult.
mother to be put in that position where she has to explain to her own child
Yes, so
Yeah.
the
that
result of
you are a result of something that happens.
Yeah.
That it is such a
It's a,
you know, a child is a blessing, but on the flip side of it,
you're a child of a criminal.
you're a child of
But that's
something
what
that
I
was
was
so
going to say.
traumatic.
For many
Yeah.
women, and we've discussed this in our previous episodes, where they can't have children, or they don't have a partner, or etc. And they're not in a situation where they can experience a pregnancy.
But that's not.
Is that not a, you know,
But
are we? Is it almost a selfish
being
act?
ungrateful? But how is that?
No, I don't.
Not
think
in the
so.
circumstances
Not in this
of a rape,
circumstances.
no.
No, it's a totally different
No.
scenario.
Yeah. Why should that lady who is suffering? Why should she have to?
Okay, so I'm going
Pay
to push
for
it
it.
out there as I do. So, are we now saying that abortion, our own opinions, are only allowed in certain situations? And who are we to decide that, say, a lady was, got drunk, found herself in a situation that she is now pregnant? Why should she live with the consequences of making a mistake? Surely, a mistake is a mistake. You get yourself up again and push forward. No? Are we now just deciding ourselves what is
That's a
acceptable
matter
and
of being
palatable?
responsible, though, isn't it? It's a child. That's
18, at least 18 years of your
Yeah.
life. That
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying. I really do think in terms of this subject, it is completely down to the individual.
Yeah.
I know of people that have gone through this process. Some people have been fine with it. Actually, there have been others who psychologically are deeply, deeply traumatised by having to go through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know
But
that
you
with
do
a lot
receive
of
counselling before you go
not
for
always,
a termination.
not always.
Well, it's meant to be standard now.
Not always. You don't. And actually, afterwards, it can be like a post-traumatic stress. It can come on. It can be very delayed. And I think
it's got a long-lasting.
It has a long-lasting
effect on
impact to you.
Yeah.
For some people it doesn't. I think it really is an individual.
Yeah.
For me
Very much
personally, it's not something that I would choose to do. But I can say that in these circumstances, God forbid I was put in a really difficult circumstance and I had to make that decision. But I do think it's something that is. It is entirely down to the individual.
I mean,
I can't
not-
pass
yeah.
judgment
Yeah.
on someone
Are we
else's
not
decision.
lucky? Thinking of the word I've used, lucky. Are we? Well, it is. Are we not
Fortunate or
fortunate, privileged to be in a country? Because in the US, you can't just go and have a termination. You have to go for your doctors. They have to go for your health. It's really drawn out. Whereas here, we could just pick up the phone, talk to somebody within how many days
Within
or
a day.
whatever. Go and have this procedure. Not like I'm thinking about the people in Ireland who have to pay to come over here,
And then
pay
still
for the
fear,
service,
yeah,
then
and still
be
face
here
the
that-
charges
God
of a
for-
murder.
Exactly. If their friend tells someone, authorities find out.
Yeah.
And then situations where there was an Asian woman in Ireland who was going through difficulties in her pregnancy and labour, and the husband was saying, please, could we terminate the pregnancy
Yeah.
because I want my
Why?
My
wife
Yeah.
to live. And they said, the midwife said, cannot do it because I'll get charged. And the woman,
She died.
she did
Yeah.
die,
Oh,
she
well,
did
yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And it was quite gruesome,
Yeah.
and
It's really
suffering
sad
she
when you can
went through.
foresee that and you don't
Yeah.
prevent that from happening. I mean,
But in Ireland, they
That's
don't have.
unbelievable.
It looks like they don't have exceptional cases in
there
the
aren't.
situation of rape, for example.
But isn't, and I don't know, I might be wrong, but isn't this legislation, isn't this based on Catholicism?
Catholic
And
beliefs.
obviously,
That every life is sacred.
every life is
Yeah.
sacred, and for example, not using contraception and things like that. So I think this is based on something that.
Yeah, theology.
and
But
we're
also-
quite blessed in a religion where if worst case scenario, when you have to, for survival, if you have to eat pork, you're allowed to do
You're
that
allowed, yeah.
to survive,
When we speak about
So-
survival, then
Although it's not a nice thing to do, but
maybe sorry, when we speak about survival, there was a program, again it was based in Iran, a documentary about this guy. He was trying to make ends meet. He had to sell his kidney at the end of the day to bring in some money, and then his wife was pregnant. They weren't well to do, and they both agreed that they couldn't bring a life into this situation where they're living hand to mouth day by day. So they had a backhanding termination, which can, you know, kill women. It's happened in history before.
Yeah.
The reason why it's open now is because you had some shady characters.
Yeah.
It's unsafe.
But does our faith accommodate for situations like this? I mean, again, you could say that was a test for them. You know, Allah provides His own
It's risk.
His risk. How would you say that in English? His own blessings and provisions,
Provisions.
for each child. But does that mean again we have to suffer? I mean, what happens in? Look at the Philippines. They're mainly Catholic. They can't have birth control. I don't think they're allowed to have terminations. And you have families that have 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, children, and they're struggling. Wouldn't it be more merciful to
give the options to
have options for women to, because this is a woman's body, and you're going to live with the consequences. And let's just face it, you know, to deal with abortion and terminations, it's not only single women who may have got themselves in the situation. There are lots of people who are married who just simply can't afford to.
Well, rigidness.
And it's a joint decision.
It's about being practical. You know, life comes with all sorts of situations. So you cannot just say, well, you know, like you were saying, even in Islam, you know, you can eat pork if you're in a situation, you know, when it comes to, you know, life and death, basically. If you don't eat it, then you might die of hunger or whatever it is. Same thing. It's not black and white. We have to weigh it and see, okay, is this worth it? Is it not? And it all comes to the situation at the end of the day.
It boils down to the situation.
And I know for a fact that when it comes to terminations, if you're from a certain ethnic or religious background, Sikh, Hindu, and they get an idea that there's a sense of, you know, you could be subjected to an honour killing or something, they will make provisions for you to go and have a termination. So are we saying, okay, Muslim sister, we all make mistakes. I'm not saying we make this mistake, but we're all human. I think our religion is compassionate enough to incorporate everybody. So she's meant to you know, continue a pregnancy and ostracize herself from, you know, because
if you're suggesting that there's an honour killing, then in theory her life is at risk.
No, but a central situation, an interesting one. The lady was Asian. Her partner was black, from a very religious family here. Her father and her family didn't know that she had had a child. The mum knew, and you know, she was hiding it because she was. Obviously, in certain cultures, it affects, you know, if your sisters are going to get married, etc. So what, she needs to suffer? That poor child has to suffer just because, you know, we weren't merciful enough to give her an option of, you know, you made a mistake. Do you have to live with the consequences of all mistakes? I mean, would it have been better for her to be given the choice that if you want a termination in this situation, on a case-by-case basis?
But isn't that also like opening it, you know, open the doors to for everyone, you know? It's okay to go and do mistakes, you know. It makes us less careful, less responsible.
People that are going to abuse
it will be abused.
It will be abused.
If you're saying you're in a relationship with someone and you're...
It's different if she's 15 and she did that mistake, but if she was, you know, if she's an adult and she made a choice, then, well, I'm sorry, there are consequences to everything we do in life, and you simply have to,
suffer
the consequence, be responsible and take it and deal with it.
With the whole termination issue, it's so case-by-case basis. You know, I know someone who has 2 disabled children and they're expecting, and she really struggles with the 2 disabled children. So she's meant to, you know, accidents happen in situations like this. Are we meant to say, well, you just carry that cross and you crack on? I have a problem.
No, but I don't think I think part of it is, I mean, the attitude that we're saying, you made a mistake, get on with it. I don't think that's the attitude that anyone has. I think majority of people. No, I think the majority of people are, you know, stuff does happen. And there are lots of people that have babies and they're unplanned and things, and you know, things turn out okay. But yes, there are some, and they have these children and they live to, you know, spend the rest of their lives regretting it. I think it's a very very complicated situation. It is completely down, you know, whatever choice is made, that woman ultimately has to live with it, whether she keeps that child or she terminates that child. Both of those are life-changing decisions, both of them, in different ways. You know, psychologically, you know, financially, if you choose to have that child and that sort of thing. I've known
spiritually as well.
Spiritually, but I've known of people that have terminated a child. And then anything that happens to them after that point was in their mind because they terminated that child.
As in anything negative.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's a really deep and very complicated.
I think if you become a blaming society, then you're really ripping yourself apart for everything that goes wrong in your life. And I think that in itself can be damaging to an individual, to this, you know, just to their mental health.
Most of the time, it falls on the shoulders of a woman for whatever reason. You know, but, you know, you can't have a baby without having a man, obviously. So where is the man in this equation?
Absolutely, it takes two.
Where is his responsibility?
Well, what if he doesn't want a child?
Exactly, and you know, many women feel the pressure because of the man. The man tells her, well, you have to have, you know, the abortion. You can't keep the baby. A lot of pressure on the woman. You know, if you do it, you're doomed. If you don't do it,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. We're sort of talking about a woman making a mistake. Well, as Tamara, you said, there's
two hands to clap.
Exactly. So why are we placing all of the emphasis on this woman that's going to have to carry this responsibility? I mean, I think is like a blaming society. We're very quick to point the finger and say she. You know, women are supposed to be, you know, weaker than men. I use that term loosely, but then at the same time, when something goes wrong, it's her. Like with all things, you know, when a marriage breaks down, or maybe it's your wife, maybe you didn't control your wife properly. I think we take on so much. So much, and our nature is, you know, we're naturally very, very emotional. Our psychology is very, very different, and we have this tendency to take on the responsibility of everything. But
we learn as well to take the blame.
Where is the guy? Yeah. You know, where is the guy?
We
in
accept
this situation?
it. We accept it as just a natural thing. Yes, it's our responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you know of an incident that happened in Saudi where a lady was, I think she came out late at night or something, and some guys raped her. But she was punished as a result, and they were set
going
free.
Out.
Yeah, she was punished for going out at
because
night.
she
and they
went
were set free.
She wasn't chaperoned or something.
Yeah, or something like that. I believe so. Yeah. That was the reason. I mean, fair enough. It was silly of her to do that in the first place, knowing what kind of society environment that she's living in. It was very reckless.
We don't know if she went out to get some milk for the child. We just don't know.
Yeah, but why were these men suddenly thought, oh my God, here's an opportunity, let's pounce on her? I mean, the men, that goes to show the mentality these men have as well, which is absolutely sickening. You know, they are responsible for it, and they should be equally punishment, if not more.
And like you said earlier in the beginning of the program, that, you know, rape is usually used as a form of control over women and humiliation. Have you heard of the case of those two Indian ladies who were judged by a court, whatever, in some Indian village, to be raped and humiliated by walking naked in the village because their brother, he married a woman from a different caste and ran away with her. And they will be his sisters are, you know, being somehow have to be punished for it, and they have to be raped, and it's like, you know, it's
very extreme.
It's
that's
such
very extreme.
Yes, it is. Of course, it is very extreme. But then you see how it's being used as a form of humiliation.
Yes. I wonder if this is really spoken about in the community as well. Because, you know, we have what's interesting to me is that in the Muslim community, being in the West, we do have a lot of different Muslims coming into England, say Somalians and different cultures. And, you know, for a lot of the teenagers, just being in a different culture and acclimating, and you can find yourself in certain situations. I know for a fact, I was speaking to a Somalian friend, that this is really becoming a problem because for the girls, they're having like an identity crisis, and accidents do happen. And, you know, there's quite a few incidences where, you know, Somalian people are going for terminations because, you know, as I said, they've made a mistake, and maybe it's a part of, you know, not growing up, but, you know, becoming older, wiser.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes
but
it needs to be spoken about.
But this is what I'm saying. When did we become so uncaring for each other? I mean, who would want any sister regardless if it's a religious sister or just another woman on the street. Who would want any woman to have to go through that and experience that alone?
I think the problem with most people is we have this holier than thou card. If you're Muslim, then you need to be following everything, and if you know to the letter, and if you do that, nothing will ever go wrong in life. And if it does,
it's instilling fear rather than instilling mercy in people. I mean,
and
that's
what religion
it
is
says in the
about,
Quran,
mercy.
if somebody makes a mistake, you don't taunt them afterwards for it.
Exactly.
And our society, and I believe in the culture that I've seen and I've witnessed, is you get taunted for the rest of your life. It's almost like you have to hear it for the rest of your life. This is what you did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is what you did.
Or
All
you
your
brought
life
this
you're
on
hearing
by
it.
yourself.
Exactly. And I think it's really, really bad. If people really understood these kind of things, they wouldn't be as harsh, because Allah's merciful ultimately at the end of the day. And again, it's not something that we can take advantage of, but however mistakes happen, it's human nature. We will make mistakes because no one's perfect. And I think the fact that society punishes you as much as that, or certain cultures, I'm not saying about society, I think the British...
Generally, society in general, we've heard a lot of cases about teenagers committing suicide because something they've done, and they
It's
call her
because they're
certain
scared of the
names
taunts and the way they're going to be looked at
And
afterwards.
the shame of it as well.
Of course.
I was watching an old episode of Oprah Winfrey, and they had they were just showing people that were courage in women, and there was a lady who was brutally raped. I almost wanted to say through no fault of her own. Obviously, it wasn't her own fault, and she decided to continue with the pregnancy, and she brought her child on set, and then the presenter was asking, well, does this child know what happened, how she's been created? And she said, yes, I've told my child and stuff. And I just thought, wow. And they were
That's
asking
heavy.
the girl, she was
That's
young at the
really
time, to
heavy.
say, how do you feel about this? And what she was saying is that I love my daughter. I wouldn't, I wish anything else. I'm glad I had her. But it was a blessing. Maybe this is a way that I could have had children. But the daughter was saying, that she felt, sometimes she did feel guilty because she knew that she would never get to see, her father. I hate to use that term, but that's what he is. And but she knew that she was very loved, and she was a very confident young girl.
I was about to say maybe the bond that she's had with her mother.
The mother
and,
was so strong, and then the mother was saying,
compensated
yes,
for
she obviously you don't go around shouting it out because you don't want everyone to ask you 50 billion questions.
No, just go on Oprah Winfrey instead.
I thought that was interesting that she wasn't Muslim, and she made that decision, and at the end of it she saw this light at the end of the tunnel. I think with the scholars a lot, when it comes to difficult decisions and circumstances, they'll always tell you that there's light at the end of the tunnel, which isn't always helpful when you're in the situation. But I found that really interesting, that this girl knew exactly how she had been made, and I was thinking, that is a lot to take on, but she was so confident.
Yeah, sometimes confidence and what appears to be as confidence is not necessarily what's inside of you. We like to show that we're confident. Because that's what's expected of us. Even that woman, she's taken that decision. I mean, I don't know her. I don't know her situation. I don't know her personally, obviously, but just generally thinking, she's taken that decision for herself. No, I'm strong enough, I'm going to take it, and she's a blessing. It's a lot of pressure.
Well, she's always turned it all around there, hasn't she? That's quite big of her to do that. Although, fair enough, the circumstances weren't good, but she's turned the whole thing around, and maybe that strength is, is shown through the child. Now that child has got that strong mentality and that attitude as well. Provided that they have the right kind of, people around them, it can work, if that makes sense. Again, it just depends. You seek comfort. You find comfort in people that are understanding.
But it's also putting that child in the situation where she's literally forcing her to be strong about it. She's putting her in the middle of that
maybe
situation.
Not forcing it. I'm sure they have times where you break down, but you're there for each other. Anything can break you down. Doesn't necessarily have to be this particular circumstance. Even a death, your father passes away or your brother passes away, that can be really traumatizing as well if you think about it. I mean, and then you need to get that comfort and that source of comfort from somewhere. It's all about your support system and how you deal with
people
it.
who you know, in war situations where they're married and they're raped and they have to have those children, and how their husbands feel about.
Yes.
A lot of them leave. So in those situations, the husbands have left the home because of the fact that they've had a child that's obviously not theirs. But time to go into a break. I hope to see you on the other side.